Welcome to this short introductory video on the VMX Web Console Framework. In this tutorial, we'll be talking about perspectives and how we construct them, adding new views and removing views from the perspectives, the lifespan of views, a little bit about how you move them around and create them, and finally how we save and share layouts between users. We'll go straight to the tool from here. So the first thing you have to do is log in. Your administrator should have provided you credentials if you can't create them yourself. And having logged in, you'll be presented with a set of layouts you can choose from. Layouts define the set of perspectives that are available, and within those perspectives which views you can see. So in this case we have three. The top one, the basic templated layout, is the default. It's always available and it will create an empty layout. The other two have been created by other users in the past. For the sake of this demo, I'm just going to use the basic templated layout. So select it and press OK. You'll notice there's a box down here which allows you to always load the last known good one, which you can use if you want. Having loaded the basic templated layout, it only comes with one perspective, labeled perspective 1, which has in its own right a navigator which allows you to launch existing views and the properties view. You also have access to the console settings, which are layout independent. They display a list of layouts where you can save and load them. We'll get back to that later, plus some general settings for this installation of the web console. So if we go back to perspective 1, the first thing we will do is try and add some basic views. Aggregators are a common construct inside the VMX world. So if we double click on one of these, we can see that it will launch its own view in its own tab. Tabs are mounted on something called tab panes. So in this view we have a tab pane here and a tab pane here. Views can be moved between tab panes by dragging and dropping. For example, I can move the properties view across to this other tab so that when I select items in this aggregator, the properties come up here. You can also create brand new tab panes by dragging and dropping an existing tab onto the south or east panel controls down here. So for example, if I wanted to mount the properties view in a brand new tab panel on the right hand side, I could drop it onto the new east panel, and that creates another tab panel here. I could then add views to it simply by double clicking and then moving them around like so. You also have the option of mounting them to the south of the view, and as you can see that creates a new tab panel at the bottom. New views can be created via the plus buttons at the end of each tab panel. So if I wanted to add a new view to this one here, I could click the plus, and you have two options. You can create a brand new view. So for example, I could create a new item trace view and give it a name. My new item trace view, and click OK, and that creates a new item trace view here. Or I could add an existing view. For example, if I shut down a navigator, and you'll see because I've shut down the last tab in the tab pane is removed. I could click plus, go to an existing view, and relaunch the navigator from the perspective views here, which brings back the navigator. You may have noticed when I clicked on plus and selected a new view, I had some options about something called the lifespan of a view. There are three main options. It can be a temporary view, which means it will exist only for as long as it exists on a tab panel, at which point it will be destroyed. A perspective level, which means it's available just for this single perspective, or a layout level, which we'll talk about later. I'll give you an example of a temporary view now, if I just shut this down. So if I open up a chart, like so, just so you know, when we open a new view from here, it will always find the largest tab panel added to that by default. And from this particular chart, I can do a drill down, show items in item trace view. Again, it finds the biggest panel, and it gives me a list of the items that were helping to contribute towards that chart over time. This view has been created as a temp view, as you can see by its precursor here. Temp views exist only for as long as you're looking at them. When you click on the close, it will say, are you sure you wish to close, and OK, and it will no longer be available to you in the perspective. Temp views can be promoted if you want to keep them around. For example, if I go and drill down again, I got the same view, and I can see it's listed as a temporary view in the navigator. If I right click on this and go promote to perspective level view, it's now part of the perspective and will be persisted when we save it. So when I close this, it won't go away, and if I double click to bring it back, I'll see the view is returned. So temporary views only exist for as long as they're visible on screen, at which point they'll be destroyed. You may have noticed we have perspective level views, but the vast majority of views that are present in the web console are defined in something called the RCP console, which is the main configuration tool, as well as the FAT client for viewing information within VMX. RCP views are constructed in the RCP world and not in the web console world, so when you open these, you can play with the settings and you can change them, etc. But these settings will exist only for as long as this view remains as part of the perspective. As soon as I close this down and reload, the next time I load it will come back with the defaults as defined by the RCP. So in this way, if I wanted to reconfigure this view and save it, it will be fine, it will save, but once I close it, it will come back with the settings present in the RCP. This is not true for web console perspective defined views. When I open and change the settings on these, for example, if I change this to a 1 minute window here and close this down, because this is the perspective level view, when I reopen it, the settings will be restored as I left them. So these have been defined explicitly on the web console and not on the RCP, therefore all their settings are managed by the web console directly. So now I'll demonstrate layout level views to you. The RCP views are available to all perspectives. The perspective level views are available only to perspective 1 in this case. If I create a new perspective, perspective 2, I can see all the RCP level views available to me here, just like in perspective 1, as defined by the RCP, but the only perspective level views will be the navigator and the properties view, which are the default views which are added. If I want to share a view from perspective 1 across to perspective 2 and any other perspectives for that matter, I can promote it to a layout level view. For example, if I take my new item trace view and I right click and promote to a layout level view, you can see it's still present here, but when I go back to perspective 2, I'll also see it's available in perspective 2, and I can launch that, and I can see the time settings that I put in there before are present as well. With layout level views, just like with RCP views, if I close this down, if I change the settings for example, and close it down, when I launch it back, it will not retain those settings. That's because this view can be present in many perspectives, and none of them are the master perspective, so to speak. So you need to explicitly save it back as an update to the layout level view. So if I come over here and I change it to half an hour, in terms of the time window, I have to right click and save these settings back. Then when I reopen this view in any other perspective, you'll see it comes back with the settings as saved. So importantly, these settings, the layout level settings, will only be persisted based on local changes in your perspective if you then right click and save the settings back as a layout level. Otherwise they'll be lost when you close down the view locally. Layout level views can be demoted back into a perspective view by right clicking in and demoting to perspective view. Importantly, when that happens, a local copy is made in every perspective. If I want to save the changes I've made to this layout, including all the perspectives and all the views I've created, I need to go to the console settings and provide a name. So my new layout. When I do so, I can give it a description, and I can select who I'm going to share it with. So I can share it as not shared, which means only I will see it when I log in my list of layouts. I can share it as a read-only for all other users, and they'll be able to open it, and if they choose, they can make a copy and edit it. Or I can save it as writable. If I save it as writable, all users have access to change it and to save it back as read-only, so you're effectively making it open to the world to do with as they wish. So I will save this just as a not shared layout, and it will appear in my layout list here. If I log out and then log in again, it will be available in my layout list. Finally, note that the layout I'm currently working on is shown at the bottom in the utility bar. If you choose, you can also reorder the perspective tabs by dragging and dropping them around, like so, in the event that you wish to display them in a different order, having progressed the layout.